while Amy was playing, I had the transforming moment of being back in the car Friday and going to Salina, and yesterday coming home from Salina. And this little girl from Brooklyn has fallen in love with the Flint Hills. You know, there is that broad expanse of sky. It is just so enormous and immense, and it just goes forever, and you can just see forever, which is what I love about the ocean. And because God provides, I have the wind factor. Going there and coming back. My arms were a little sore because I had to hold on to the wheel so tight. But the wind was just blowing both ways. But, you know, I could see all around. I could see the changing of the season, and I could see God's incredible work all around me. And I just was grateful. I'm grateful to be a Kansan and grateful to live in this part of Kansas. And of course, then I get to sit in a building for 2 days. But here's the good news. The bishop starts off our 2 days by telling a story about, as you might remember, his whole family and generations are from very southern Texas. And when the hurricanes hit, everybody in his family was being impacted. And he has a son who was a pastor, and his town was impacted, and a daughter whose church not far was trying to get supplies, and he and Maya didn't know what to do, so they went to the store and they got 2 buckets together, and they, you know, and they're driving home with their flood buckets, and he's saying, Maya, this is not going to do much good, and what are we going to do? Our kids and my mom and my dad and the family and everybody's there, and that's when on a Friday afternoon, he got the idea that he should challenge the conference to create 5,000 flood buckets. And it was reported to us that, in fact, we collected 6,340 flood buckets, which is incredible. And that, you know, so that just stirred the house. But then, okay, so then Holly Talley, who is a disaster person, wanted to give little certificates to each of the district superintendents. And she mentioned some, she spoke very quietly. She's a quiet little woman who does such big work. And so what I realized is that she was going to hand out these certificates in order from the district who had collected the most on down. Topeka District collected the most flood buckets out of all the 17 districts, and so we collected 600. We only were challenged to do 300, and we did 630, which was just amazing, you know. And so we were. It was just like lots of celebration, and what that really called into my mind was the blessing of being a connectional church. Because what the bishop said was true. His 2 little flood buckets weren't going to change the tide, not even for his son and his son's church. It was going to take the effort of the whole United Methodist Church. And I don't want to forget this. Just the Great Plains Conference raised $837,287, you know, don't quote me on the 287,000, but I mean, 837,000 plus about $300 for UMCOR, which in and of itself is amazing. And so, but all of this goes together with all of the other resources, and that's why UMCOR can say we will stay until every single person and every single need is cared for. And being part of the connectional church is what we as United Methodists believe we are called to be. That it's not just what we as a faith community can do or what we as a Topeka district can do, but it's what all of our resources together can do. And you know, as we begin our worship series on stewardship, there is no better time to celebrate that, because this has always been God's divine plan. God's divine plan has always been about creating the universe and then making us good stewards of that universe. And in case you're thinking I'm making this up because apparently I'm a good storyteller, but in Genesis, right at the very beginning, page 1 of the Bible, God says in verse 26, and then God said, "Let us make humanity in our image to resemble us, so that they may take charge of the fish of the sea and the birds of the sky and the livestock and all the earth and all the crawling things on the earth." God had this idea that God wanted to be in relationship with humanity. And then in order to make that happen, God would have to create this world in which humanity would live. But then there would be all these moving parts. And who was going to take care of all these moving parts? And so God thought, well, a good plan would be, the divine plan would be that the humans would take care of all the moving parts. But that's not because God was just going to up and leave us and forget about us. It's because God was going to continue creating and doing wonderful, marvelous things for us. And God's plan had more parts to it. Because if you were to turn to Deuteronomy, in the 6th chapter, beginning with the 4th verse, he calls out to his people, the chosen people, "Israel, listen, our God is the Lord, only the Lord. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your being, and all your strength. And these are the words that I'm commanding you today. You must always be on your mind. Recite them to your children. Talk about them when you are sitting around in your house, and when you're out and about, and when you're lying down, and when you're getting up." Because in order for us to have this relationship with God, that God was going to create the world, and God was going to create us, and we were going to have this relationship, there was going to have to be some kind of guidelines on how this relationship was going to work. And the way it was going to work is we were going to love God. We were going to be in a loving relationship with God. And God so wanted this relationship to be one that not only was happening in the beginning, but would continue. So our responsibility was to keep teaching it to the people that we would bear, the children we would have, and our grandchildren and our great-grandchildren, and would go on and on. And through the ages, this continued, and God continued to think that was a good idea. And so we find in the Gospel of Mark, in Mark chapter 12, that Jesus says, and the most important commandment is, our God is the one Lord. And you must love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your being, with all your mind, and with all your strength. And the second commandment is this: you will love your neighbor as yourself. Because if we're going to make this work, not only is God making us good stewards of all the creation that God has made, because in order for God to keep creating, God needs to involve us in taking care of creation. But we were going to need to be in a good, loving relationship with God, and then we were going to need to be in a good, loving relationship with one another. And we look around and we think, what's going on in the world? Because it doesn't seem like that's what we see. And people are getting discouraged. And I hear over and over in conversations, bad things are happening here, bad things are happening there, and all over. And I sat at a table with a bunch of clergy and lay leaders. It was the Connecting Council, which is the leadership team of the Great Plains Conference. And I said, I don't do good with sad. I'm not good. I'm not a person that can live in a sad world. I need to be thinking about what we're going to do to make a difference. And as your pastor, I need for us to be thinking about what we can do to make a difference. And I think we have been on that trajectory for years. I think that about 3.5, 4 years ago, when a group of us got together and created a strategic planning team, and we got together and we started thinking about, what's really important to us as a faith community. And we decided what was really important to us as a faith community is to really think about, what we hold as important. And what we hold as important is our faith in Jesus Christ. And we hold that right up there. That is the most important thing. And we understand we live under the umbrella of the United Methodist Church. And the umbrella of the United Methodist Church, the mission statement is to make disciples of Jesus Christ for the transformation of the world. And we go, well, that is really cool. But, unless we can figure out who we are and what our relationship with God is and how we live out that relationship with God, it's going to be a little hard for us. And so we need to kind of figure out our piece of the pie in that and how we're going to live that out and make that real for us. Because number one, and I'd always like to, I like to argue a lot of things, but, we don't make the disciples. The Holy Spirit convicts. But, we can participate in inviting people and equipping people to follow the way of the Lord. But, what we decided after a lot of conversation over the period of about a year and a half is that we believe that we want to be followers of Jesus Christ. We can claim that. As the people of Susanna Wesley, we want to be followers of Jesus Christ. And that we're going to find a way to do that. And the way we're going to find to do that is by seeking, sharing, and serving in God's love. And when we are seeking, sharing, and serving in God's love, then we're going to be able to be doing those things that help us to live as followers of Jesus Christ. Now, when we're seeking to grow closer to God. And we can't be doing any of this, helping other people to become disciples of Jesus Christ, until we have a relationship with Jesus Christ ourselves. And it's right there that we need to hit the pause button and kind of take a really good look at ourselves and say, how are we doing with that? How serious are we about our knowing God? Because it's not knowing about God. It's not about opening up a book and reading it cover to cover and being able to answer all the questions and say, we got it down. It's about having that personal relationship with Jesus Christ. It's about that intentional prayer conversations in which not only are you talking to God, but you're taking the time to listen to what God has to say to you. And it's about that presence, about being in God's presence in worship and in devotion time. And about making sure that you set aside intentional time to be with God. Because when you are growing a relationship, you do that. What came across my mind, and it's more applicable for some of us than others, but whether you use one analogy or the other, think about when you were dating or when you want to, develop a friendship. You choose. But whether you're thinking about a dating relationship or a friendship relationship, what do you have to do to make that relationship grow? Throw out. Just name something. Come on. Time. It takes intentional time. You cannot grow a relationship in 5 minutes. One time seeing somebody, you're not going from the 5 minutes seeing somebody to marriage and it be done. It's going to take time. What else is it going to take? Effort. Intention, communication, conversation. Respect. Sacrifices. It's not all about you, is it? When we're trying to grow a relationship, it's not all about what we want. It's also about what the other wants. What does God want from us? Sometimes God isn't always necessarily thinking about what we need. It's about, and we've been talking about that through some of our studies. It's about when we're going through the door, it's not necessarily always about what God's doing for us. It's about what we can do for others. But this whole seeking about growing closer to God, this is an important part of our faith journey, not only as individuals, but as a faith community. And it's not, we're not going to pass the test in 1 year or 2 years, because as we continue to grow, there will be more room to grow. And as we look at what it takes for us to really get serious about our faith development, then we will find that over time, we need to be more organized about how we will invite others to enter into a life of faith here at Susanna Wesley. Because when we invite people to come, we need to then enable them to have a relationship with God that meets them where they are and moves them along to the place where God would like them to become. And so for some people, they've never known Jesus Christ, and then jumping into an advanced Bible study won't feel comfortable. And so we need to be able to provide those opportunities. And we might need to kind of make room in our thought processes about how we do some of the things we're already doing. Maybe some of the ways we do worship aren't going to always be those things that really are engaging to people who have not worshiped before. And maybe we need to be not maybe. We need to be intentional about having those conversations about if we really want to make disciples of Jesus Christ for the transformation. And when I say world, let's just say our community. Let's be concerned about the 84% of the people that live all around us who say that they have no spiritual connection or affiliation. All those people, where are they going? What are they doing on Sunday morning? We all have good guesses, but the reality of it is maybe if we had different opportunities for them or a different way for them to enter into a relationship with God, maybe they would come in and experience God, and maybe that would be the thing, an encounter in a way that they could open themselves up to seeking God in a new way. But before we can do all those things, and they're exciting things, and I know they're a little scary too, but they're exciting things. First, we have to feel that deep, growing relationship for ourselves. Because so often I'll stand up here and say, invite somebody to come, and then, when people are saying goodbye to me, and people will tell me how uncomfortable they are with doing that. And I have heard you. And what I think that it's okay for us to say to one another is then let's work on how we do that. And I think on November 7th, it's a perfect opportunity for you to come and get some tool set about how to learn to greet people. And even if you're not ready to stand up on Sunday morning, but just, kind of get more comfortable with how we meet people who come to visit us for the first time. Because we all need to be greeters. It's not just the people that are standing by a door. And then maybe when you are just standing having coffee and someone new comes by, then you will have that word of welcome that might make them feel more comfortable. And then, maybe a month later you'll be willing to go stand by the door and be a greeter. But let's try those things that will demonstrate our welcome to others in new ways. Friday night, for those of you who have never been to a harvest festival, put on your roller skates, because it's a happening thing. It doesn't stop. The activity is incredible. The pace is amazing. The place is a whirlwind. It is everything I have always prayed for this church to be every single Sunday, and I will keep praying until it happens. But it is filled with people, and it's people of all ages, races, and sizes, and they come from all over the city, and they come and they celebrate and they enjoy themselves, and we need to be here greeting them and making them feel welcome, and like we would love for them to come back again. And for some of us, I know that's a little bit harder, and so in any ways that you can participate to help us support that effort. But for even if you just want to come and experience it for a half an hour, if you've never been before, we're not making up a story. Last year we had close to 700 people come. And it's a very short window of time. So imagine all those people doing those games and going through the trunks and walking around and getting hot dogs in Fellowship Hall and the flurry of activity. And each one of them is a cherished child of God. Each one of them has this inner desire to seek something beyond themselves. Each one of them needs to grow closer to God because each one of them has needs that they probably haven't expressed to other people. And they're opening themselves up to come to this place, even if it's just for a short period of time. Let us be the welcoming face of Jesus Christ. How? How will we learn? How can we become those people who not only seek God for ourselves, but open ourselves to be those people who seek to invite people to seek God for themselves? Because that's part of the two-edged sword. When God created us, God didn't just create the world for us. God created us for the world. And that is a gift. And we started off the morning saying, this is the day that God has made. And God has made it for a good and glorious purpose. Even in those moments, there will be moments for some of us during this day, there will be some sadness, but even in the sadness, There is a sense of joy and hope because God is still at it with us. We are never alone. And this hope that we can find in this promise that this is the world that God is still involved in is the hope that says, seek me and you will find me. Grow closer to me because it's all I've ever desired is to grow close to you. God created the universe so that you might have life. You might have life. You might have life. You might have life and have it to the full. For the next 4 weeks, we're going to challenge ourselves to be thinking about how we are seeking, sharing, and serving in God's love. And on November 12th, we're going to call it our Celebration Sunday because we're going to commit, we're going to promise how we're going to just step up our commitment to the God who has committed everything to us. You know, a year ago, Paul challenged us to step up our giving by $5 during a particular season. And this morning, as I was praying in the pews, I prayed for a lot more waking up. They must be coming to the 10:15 service. That section, I don't know what happened there. Okay, but thank you. You did good here. But somewhere around Richard, raise your hand, Richard, so they know where it was. Somewhere around Richard, God said to me, "Why don't you just ask them to commit? However you're praying." You know, we all have our prayer things inside of us. Some of us, you know, and I know that, I don't have a regular prayer routine. So if you don't, develop one, choose one. Even if it's, you know, just morning, evening, just choose that. But if you have one, I would like you to choose another one. Open yourself to one more time to really be in God's presence and to really be listening to what God would have you hear and know. Because if we're going to grow closer to God, the person we need to be in conversation with is God. Because God may need you to be studying something you're not studying. God may need you to be serving somebody you're not serving. God may need you to be doing something you are not doing. But you're not going to hear it if you're just, you know, keeping the world busy and noisy all around you. So your challenge for this week is to intentionally choose an additional prayer time. And on top of that, to be praying for how God is going to be leading you in the weeks ahead to commit to further commitment in Christ. Let us pray. God, you are calling us to seek, share, and serve beyond our doors and beyond our current understanding and beyond our current sense of knowing you. Help us to be more fully engaged in what we claim. Help us to be more fully a follower of Jesus Christ. In his holy and precious name I pray. Amen.